to introduce Lanecia Rouse Tinsley. She is a Houston-based artist, but she's also based in Virginia. She's the co-founding creative director for Imagine Noir Equity Group. This is an alliance and think tank of Black activists, artists, writers, scholars, and educators. She's also the director of Justice in the Arts with Project Curate. Lanecia has served as the artist in residence partner of Holy Family HTX since 2016. I think you just shared some work from there on your socials, right? I feel like I saw some recently. And she's completed multiple residencies. There's a lot to list, so just a quick mention: Rise to Asia Society and the American Church in Paris. Her work has been exhibited at Project Row Houses, essentially just down the street from here. Arisban Gallery, Inman Gallery, the Brooklyn Collective, Urban Zinn Gallery, Duke University Chapel, and many, many more. I actually first came across her story and her work in an artist profile that a mutual friend wrote back in 2019. I didn't realize it was from 2019. And her story and her work stuck with me. So I am excited for you all to hear from her. So again, if you have questions for Lanecia, please place them in the chat and we'll get them after. So I'll turn it to you, Lanecia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anson, and the McGovern Center for having me. It is truly an honor whenever I am invited to share my artistic journey and work with the community, especially here in Houston. So I'm really grateful for this time. Typically, I like to enter into all things with poetry. Poetry, as I have grown in my art practice and just grown in living, has become an essential part of my grounding and helping me to build my emotional intelligence and embrace the beauty of being human. But because we're recording this and it's live, I'm not going to read the poem, but definitely Lucille Clifton is pretty much a daily companion of mine, her work. And there's a poem that she wrote called "Won't You Celebrate With Me?" And if you are not familiar with it, I do encourage you to Google and find it or buy her collection and read that poem and her other poems. She deals a lot with womanhood and resiliency in life. And so it has been a great source for me in reminding me to continue to lean in on the days when it's hard, and internally and externally. I feel like she has a line that says, every day something has tried to kill me and failed. And whenever I really feel like in the depths of that, I turn to that poem and it gives me strength on the bridge between, which is a line from her poem. And that's what I'm titling this talk, On the Bridge Between. A little bit about my artistic journey and my work. I'm going to share a slide as I talk to kind of take us through my life as an artist here in Houston. So I came to art in a very roundabout way. I come from a lineage of creatives, I like to say, from the deep South. Some of them migrated up north during the Great Migration, but a lineage of creatives who were farmers, pastors, educators, writers, musicians, dancers, homemakers, engineers, and factory workers. I was born to a mother who is an artist in her own right. She writes, she sings, she dances, she acts, and then a father who's a pastor. And in so many ways, as I look at my life, both of their ways of making a life for themselves and their giftings and their vocations have truly shaped the person that I am, the life I've chosen to make for myself, and the artist that I am today. I went a roundabout way, though, of getting here. At first, I grew up pastor and artist. I mean, my dad's a pastor, my mom's an artist. Creativity was really nurtured in our home. I mostly with music. Books were always accessible to us and fostered so much of my imagination, along with my sister, who is a poet. and film, like was always a part of our house. And we were acting and dancing as well. But the visual arts was just something that always seemed a bit intimidating for me. I didn't feel like I had the strengths and I was fearful. Fear will come up a lot in my talk of truly leaning into something that I didn't feel growing up I was strong at for various reasons. I was just the child that needed to do things that I excelled at in order to survive my younger teenage years. And so music, though, was definitely always that art form that was a part of my life and my formation, and words, for sure, and story. Always loved story. And pushing ahead, I ended up going to seminary, to divinity school, and was in ministry for about 15 years before I landed in Houston, Texas, to manage an art project that I'll tell you about in a second. But I do know that because of that early formation and just my living, that I always, since a child, just truly believed in thirst for opportunities to create and needed opportunities to encounter beauty in its various ways in order to survive this life that we are living. Those were really two important things, threads of my journey that are continue today, a deep hunger and a deep thirst for both of those. But in 2011, I came to Houston to manage an art project, a therapeutic art and economic project with men and women living on the streets. So it was part of Bread of Life, which is a part of St. John's downtown in Houston. And it was really there that I began to reawaken to the artist within me. It was through sitting in the shelter with the artists in the program, through hosting workshops where we brought in local artists and teachers to teach. And, sometimes I'd be in the back doing my administrative thing, but I was always listening in, and I was learning not only from the artists that we brought in, from the teachers that we brought in, but also from the artists in the project who, in many ways, through art, were reimagining their lives, were talking about the things, cultivating joy and talking about the things that help to build resiliency within them, sharing their stories, letting go of part of the stories that they needed to, and reclaiming new stories as they created beautiful art. And so I say I sat back, but I was taking it in. And every now and then I would join at the table as the director of the project and received the gift that art can be, both as a way of like a cathartic practice, a healing practice, but also there's just really something powerful when we're able to make what is visible, invisible within us, visible, to make something out of nothingness and using our hands. And I began to realize that I craved to be at the art table. I craved to make art. I craved to share art with the world and make things with my hands and tell stories and play with color and contribute to the art community locally and beyond. And so in 2013, I became pregnant with a beautiful child, just mere existence, the beauty. AGA is what we call her, Lanecia Tinsley. And through that process of becoming a mother, I began to let go of some of the fears that were keeping me from leaning fully into my artist's identity, because I wanted to be a mom who was living fully into joy, fully into her giftings, and living the life that she imagined for herself. As life would have it for me, I ended up having a medical condition that led to a premature labor. And AJ was born on December 4th in 2013 and lived a little over 2 hours and died. She had heartbeat, but her lungs weren't fully developed. And so she was with us a short period of time, but her existence, the time that we had with her and her death really propelled me to start asking some really hard questions and naming things and answering them, and then having the courage to lean into the answers that often always lead to more questions. But for me, it led to me getting a studio in downtown Houston, to making art, to doing the work of building a business, of sharing the art and honor. I feel like everything that I do is really an honor of her. And yeah, just living the story that I imagine and being the mother that I continue to want to be in this world. And so when I first started, though, I had a lot of learning to do, and I turned to not only like paints in the studio and tried out at different mediums, which I'll show you some of the work, but it was important for me to sit with art in our city and go to the museums and figure out which artists were really drawing my attention and capturing my imagination and learning their stories, and doing a lot of reading so that I could name the why for myself. You know, art had always been like this healing space, especially during the depths of my grief, to help me get through the initial stages of grief. Art was there, and I knew if I was going to continue living with the pain of her absence, that I needed to continue leaning into that artist and becoming the artist that was definitely within me. And so I turned to the words of writers who had thought long and hard about what it meant to be an artist in this world. And James Baldwin's words from the creative process that are here on the screen just really grabbed me and grounded me and gave me a vision for how I wanted to center my practice. And especially the last line of this particular paragraph that's at the beginning of the essay, when he says the precise role of the artist then is to illuminate that darkness within, like when we're alone, and blaze that trail and just be introspective and go deep, so that after all, we could make this world a more human dwelling place, that we can participate in that. And not only for the world around us, but also for myself, art became a way for me to be more human in this world and to survive, and not only survive, but seek to thrive in living and dwelling on this world. In this world with all of our limitations, uncertainties, and unknowns, and even daily for me, fear. Art was a way for me to lean into strength and to push past, to feel the fear and do it anyway, to be honest about what I was feeling, to be honest about my thoughts and my questions, which in many ways builds daily a sense of resiliency that pushes me forward. I had a lot of learning to do, so I allowed myself to dwell and be in the things, the mediums that really I loved and that I was curious about, and spent maybe 6-7 years of my career initially just learning various mediums. Started with abstract painting, a lot of acrylic, experimented with oils, really love acrylic paint, and so that's definitely a part of my practice today. Here's some of my early abstract works. I was also doing collage, putting forward-facing. Initially, people were probably more familiar with my abstract paintings, but I did a lot of encaustic and layers. I love layers and texture, and the building story on surface has always been a draw to me. And so here are some of the early encaustic collage works that I did on found wood and bought wood. Then in 2016, I did a wonderful project where I created a collage a day for 100 days. So ended up with 100 collages. And it was a break away from the abstraction that I was doing. I wanted to daily show up for myself in my practice, but also spend some time activating and exploring a different material, a different way of expression than the abstract painting that I'd been doing. And so here are a couple of the collages from that period that I really just created for myself. And it has formed my practice and my way of showing up to the studio, even on the days when inspiration is not there and it's hard. That practice of doing that 100-day project still remains with me, all of the things that I learned through that, as well as a deep love for collage work that I did not realize I had until I did that project. But I continued to paint abstract work, doing collage in the background. This is a piece, and I love collaboration, and I've done a couple. One of my favorites is one with my sister. She's a poet, and so we collaborated for one of her book projects. And as a musician at heart as well, it was really cool to have my art on an album with her words. And then I am a community partner with a church, Episcopal church here in town, Holy Family HTX, and they commissioned me to do 9 6 feet by 6 feet paintings for their liturgical rhythm of life. And here's just 2 examples of those works, or 2 pieces from that collection. That journey taught me so much as well. And one thing that I love to share with people is that I, again, was afraid, intimidated by the big canvas. And I remember having them here maybe for a month and going to the art store and the art manager saying, like, how are those big canvases going? And I was like, masterpieces of minimalism. And we laughed. And then he said, you know, paint big and just remember that the canvas is strong enough to hold all of your energy and all of your truth. Like, just let it out and work from there. And we talked about some technical things. And there was just something about those words and publicly just kind of naming out loud what I was fearing in that moment, and then allowing myself to receive some encouraging words from someone else, and especially that the canvas could hold it all, just really resonated deep within and opened up a well within me to do the work that was before me. And so those are 2 of the paintings from that series. Then in 2019, I was really ready to explore some of the grief of being a childless mother in this world, and pulled on some of the photography, because I always have a camera with me, of photos that I had taken during the initial stages of grief. Words were hard for me. Watercolor painting was good, but my camera, I would just walk around at Herman Park, for those of you in Houston, and photograph nature a lot, and just these really precious moments that tended to the tenderness of my heart. And so cyanotype was a medium that I could use, that I wanted to use and I was curious about, in exploring this blue that comes from green. The blue that comes from green, and both of those colors hold so much symbolism for me. And the process itself involves water and air and light and shadow and darkness in order for a piece to become. And so that too resonated with my grief process and getting through. And so cyanotype seemed like the perfect medium for doing that work. And so this piece is a huge quilt piece. It's slow in the making, as our grieving often is. And it was a lot of manual labor. There's probably some blood as I hand stitched all of those pieces of fabric, the fragments, the broken pieces together to make a whole in this work. And of course, I included some lines of poetry. In this one, there's Mary Oliver, and then my sister wrote some poems. It's with regards to the same kind of grief of loss of losing AJ that I incorporated in this work. And then I have had some opportunities. If you are at Sweet Green in Rice Village, you may see this piece that's also a cyanotype piece that's there. Like I said, I always have a camera with me, and I love shooting the community of Third Ward where I live, and was able to create some pieces, mostly for myself, of moments in Third Ward through the cyanotypes. And to 2020, I was fortunate enough to be a part of Round 51 Local Impact 2 that was curated by Ryan Dennis. And we never opened because the pandemic hit, as many of you know. But when I entered into 2020, before even the pandemic was a part of at least my consciousness, I had decided I really wanted to spend that year working on collage and doing collage work and really leaning in and building my creative muscles and concepts and finding out the why of doing it. And so when I got the invitation to have the house, and there was an interest in me exploring the abstraction and form of collage that I was doing, I created an installation that involved both my painting intuitively and then creating these moments of life around the space of collage. It was playful. There was holding a lot of history now and even an element of future hope for us, for people, for me. And so that project too is really dear to my heart and a special moment on my artistic journey that just lingers in so many ways. And after that, because I loved collage so much, I was like, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep leaning into this and exploring bringing abstract form, abstract surfaces, and then this form of the body into one piece on different surfaces. And it was the pandemic, and I had all of these old paintings sitting around, and I needed canvases, and I was looking at the paintings, and it just didn't seem like I was the same person that had painted those works. And some of the pieces I kept, but a number of them, I just blocked them out and began to create some new works on them. And that process was cathartic for me during that season of isolation. And it led to these works that were both merely abstract with a lot of built up surface and history, and then newspapers, because I was reading the New York Times weekly, and I just incorporated layers of those paper, and I began to explore collage and adding and subtracting and recreating works during that season. And those are some of the abstract paintings. Loved an opportunity to experiment. Being planted helped with that, to take some risk. And this is a piece that came, a collage, unprimed canvas that I collaged on top of a painted canvas and sculpted. So it's kind of a sculpture painting, one of my favorite pieces from that time. And then started bringing some form onto the canvas surface and really wanting to dive deeper into that work and just live here. And here are some of the works that were born from that season. This piece was a part of a collection that I did that was at Duke Chapel University. I did a collaboration with Kate Bowler and for the No Cure for Being Human project, and created 12 small sculptural collage pieces, and then another piece looking at resiliency of humans, how just being really honest about the difficulties, the joys, the pleasures, the struggles of being, the joys, the sorrows of being human in this world. And it was a privilege to be able to sit with people's words as well as my own and create these pieces. I love story, as I said. I'm really interested in the stories that we're born into, the ones that we choose to hold on to, what we let go of, imagining new possibilities, and writing new stories for the future. And book covers just seem to, in many ways, conceptually and just aesthetically, and I had all of these old discarded book covers, and I was like, I'm going to use them and create something new, new life and poetry, visual poetry on book covers. And so here are some of the works that I've done past couple of years, using a lot of discarded books, papers, found papers, acrylic materials, finding whatever I have around to say the thing. I find a lot of joy. Collage is almost like a puzzle. It activates both my mind and my emotional self and intuition to create these works. And I really love creating visual poems on both canvas and book covers. This fall, as was mentioned, I got to do a residency with these amazing 3 artists here in Houston. I'm at the Asia Society. I love residencies because they provide an opportunity for you to explore new things, to take risk, and just time just to focus in and hone in without the daily distractions of everything else. And so started playing with some new materials, adding some new materials to my work, doing some installation work with family storied pieces. I like storied pieces and using them with new things that, and bringing the old and the new together. And the residency allowed me to do that. It was the first time I started bringing my own photography into the work, creating work that people could interact with. So the plastic was layered on, and some of the pieces I invited them to pull up the plastic or go underneath to have a different kind of engagement and encounter with the work. That was a highlight. And then in October and December of last year, I got to show once again at Project Grow. It was a continuation of the round 51 since we weren't able to open publicly because of the pandemic. Project Grow was so generous and kind enough to invite all of the artists from that round back to do shows in the gallery. And so here are some of the pieces. In the midst of winter, there's by Camus, he has a quote where he says, like, in the midst of winter, I found that within me was an invisible summer. And that I encountered that during my period of grief, initial grief when we lost AJ, and it's just remained with me, along with Lucille Clifton's poems, as things that I turn back often to express and dive deeper into what I want to say in my work. And so the work that I showed in this exhibition, From Dusk to Dawn, The Poetics of Being, really deals a lot with those moments of finding the resiliency within the embodiment practices that we use to push forward and to lean into life. And those are photographs that I've taken here of dancers in Houston who were so gracious enough to allow me to use their likeness in my work. Other aspects of my practice that bring me joy and keep me leaning into art and life are my community partnerships, the curation that I get to do, an artist collective that I lead, teaching and workshops for sure. One of the highlights of the past couple of years was At the Table with Dinners. Houston is such a beautifully diverse city, rich with culture and personality and people. And with Holy Family, I was able to imagine ways of bringing people randomly together at the table to be encountered by art in a different way. We paired an artist with a musician, a chef, and had these intimate dining conversations at the table where people the guests were able to engage art in new ways and be in conversation. A lot happens at the table. And so we just made space for art and life to happen, and they were beautiful. We got to do 2 of those before the pandemic hit. And so definitely highlights. The Artist Collective, I've been leading a collective since 2017 in partnership with Holy Family of artists with different mediums, different stages in their careers, in life. And for a year, we choose to journey together, meeting once a month, and it culminates with an art exhibition at the end. But that community has been, when we talk about art and resilience, that has been a great source of resiliency, that community, because a lot of things we do as artists are done in isolation. And we too need opportunities to connect and to be encouraged, to be inspired, to learn, to listen, to be, to share things that are beyond just what's happening in our studio. And the artist collectives every year have just been a great source of community, love and encouragement for me. And it's been a privilege to lead and to see these artists in various ways continue to thrive, even if they're not even practicing art anymore. It's just been good to just be a part of their journeys. And then this is the last thing I'll share, and then I'll open up for questions and I can say more. But there's an art gallery here in Houston that's a part of Holy Family, and it bears my name, but it is a part of this community, and I'm a part of the curation team that gets to create exhibitions in partnership with artists for people in our city to come and to be encountered by art in a space where it's really fostered. Contemplation, meditation, stillness is really encouraged and fostered. And we've had, I think, about 6 exhibitions now, and we're open Thursday through Saturday from 11 to 4, and all are welcome to come and see the work in that space and be encountered by the stories and art of artists, both locally and some that are not even from our city. But we like to center Houston artists, and that has been a great source of joy for me as well, being able to be a part of that work. But yeah, so that's my practice. I not only as an artist am I just in here making work and creating, but a big part of my practice is also wanting to connect to the world outside, and not only speak to it through my art, but also be an active participant in the various spheres that I'm connected with, and helping to co-create a beautiful city, a beautiful world with so many people that I have the privilege of calling friends and co-conspirators and co-creators in that process. So that's a little bit about my art journey, my work, and I'm definitely open for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Lanecia. I wanted to just, first off, just thank you for sharing your story. It's interesting when I think about all the artists that have participated in this series. I wonder what your take is on kind of creativity and the arts being a way to be more open to share things that are so personal. We have a largely medically based audience here, and you draw so many clear connections to art and life. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, or just even advice for students who often have some connection to the arts, but it often gets overshadowed with kind of the pressures of doing medical school and doing all these other things. So just your thoughts on any or all of the above.
Yeah. So I think I like to encourage people to make time in your week. I would like to say daily, because there are some great podcasts out there that offer like poems that are read, and they could be 5 minutes long. So a short period to be encountered by the creative energy that exists in our world through artists. And it can be through reading a poem. It could be going to the Manil, like setting aside a day, just like an hour or 30 minutes to go to an art space, to some of the fabulous galleries that we have, to go to a movie, sit and watch a television program that is just really for you, and can bring beauty into your life, an encounter of the beautiful. I think having that a part of your daily, weekly, and if it can't be weekly, monthly, at least monthly rhythm, can be a great source of grounding, of aliveness, of empathy building, for me, it was definitely a way of remembering that I am not alone in this world. Like there is something about encountering the stories, the work, and the lives of people who have also been through, all of us have, and seeing how their ways of dealing with life, and through art, through words, through paint and dance and music and all of these things can help me actually survive and exist in this world and make it through another day. I think that's important, one, just for you to figure out what it is you can do to be encountered by the arts. I think art is a way. I don't think art has to necessarily be that space for you where you pour out
Mhm.
all of your stories and say all of the things. But I do think that there are some people who are drawn to creating works that, I've heard some poets and writers say, like, the more personal something is, the more universal.
Mm.
And I've also found, like in art, and I found that to be true. And for me in my practice, and that's how I choose to work. And I don't share everything, but there is this part of making visible what's within me and giving it life to breathe outside of myself that also keeps me from holding it in, right? And allowing it to be diseased within me, and create a disease, and helps me in getting it out too. It sometimes only leads to more questions that I need to
Mm.
like further dive into. And so it can help relieve some of the anxieties and stress and that I may carry. And I think art has that potential and is definitely a space that can hold those stories when done well. And there are works that I do that are just truly therapeutic. Like I need to get it out of my body. Um, and they're not for show. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
create art to show it to anyone. You just sometimes you just need to get something out of you, and art can be a space where you can. And I'm really grateful for that. And I have a lot of pieces that are just for me for that.
Mhm.
And that sacred, really special space that it can hold
Yeah.
of release. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that idea of like how sometimes this is just for the person, the individual.
Mhm.
It's really important to know. So Dr. Chimakova, one of our art, she's actually an artist here at the med school. She just made a comment that she loves your art. She's really impressed by you as an artist, but also your person and your soul. So I just wanted to share that comment with you. And yeah, I really liked kind of this theme of making something invisible within us visible. You shared that a couple times, and I think that's incredibly relatable to our community here that, lots of people process challenging things. And sometimes art can be a way to process it for some people, and for other people, maybe something else. So just kind of being open. So thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone have any other questions or thoughts? I think your talk was really quite powerful. Oh, I
Mhm.
think, hold on a second. I think Mary had a question or saw a hand. Someone commented, love your story and your art as well. So I think it's interesting. Grief came up a couple times in this series, which we didn't plan for, but I think it's just really telling that it's part of so many people's experience, and it is so relatable. But for us, there's this theme of art and creativity coming up as a way to kind of process it.
Yeah. I think that when I first did the initial stages of grief, since we have some time, I'll share even some more. I found myself really wanting to play with watercolor. I couldn't sleep, and physically my body needed to heal, but it didn't take a lot of energy for me to sit and just allow the water to work. And some of it was water from my faucet, and I imagine some of the pages held water from my eyes, and there was something about the repetitive motion. There's something that I think psychologists call the flow, that you can once, and it happens when we're running. A lot of athletes experience it when they're running. But also, and sometimes I experience it in spin class, when I'm just in that zone and you kind of zone out and you're just fully in your body, breathing, all is in alignment. And that happened for me during that grieving process. And it happens for me in art, where you lose track of time. Everything just seems to be perfectly kind of aligned in a way that you can just allow your mind to rest. And you're just moving and flowing, and that repetitive motion, that playing with color was definitely cathartic for me. And whenever I'm in the studio and I can get into that zone place, my work is a lot of mind and a lot of heart. But when I can get into that space where I'm not, like, all the voices are silent and I'm just in it, it is a very alive, it's alive, an aliveness that I crave and long for. Mhm.
You're just, to me, you're describing just this meditative experience. And I think that absolutely makes sense to me, because I think for some people, meditation in the traditional sense is so challenging. But then for you, it sounds like this is a very clear, grounding process, which is wonderful. And I hope, that's part of why we do these talks, to make sure we remind our colleagues and ourselves about that.
Yeah.
Couple of comments I'll share with you really
Sure.
quickly. Alma's asking, do you have any workshops in the near future coming up, or any other exhibitions perhaps?
Oh, thank you for asking. I do have a workshop coming up with the Image Journal. It's in Seattle, Washington for a week. I'll be teaching a course on abstract painting. And you can find information through Image Journal. And I will be doing a show at the Galveston Arts Center in August that I'm really excited about. And then I will have a work in a museum show opening at the Frisk in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a survey on Black collage art, contemporary collage art in America. And I have a piece that will be in that show, and it opens in September. If you're in Tennessee or want to travel to Tennessee, would love to see you there. I'm really excited about that. And then I do have a residency coming up in the fall in Charleston. But if you follow my Instagram and my website, I will have that information there and available. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
Quite a
you.
lot coming your way, which is wonderful and well deserved. Couple more questions. You may have addressed this, but Mary asks, so your work is beautiful and inspiring. One feels your heart and soul in it. I'd like to ask you to talk more about the art for healing, how it heals. I think you kind of answered a little bit of that, but if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, I think it's different for everyone. And healing looks different for everyone. I think a lot of my art making, and especially with my collage work, is a lot about story and texture and bringing history, present, and future together on these canvases. And as I work with these storied materials and old images and like history and remembering, there's something about that, and not to overdo resiliency, but there is something about remembering the stories of people who have experienced maybe not the exact thing, but things that you have, and they push through in creative ways, like getting lost in other people's stories also gives me healing and comfort and strength to lean into my own. And both in the studio, like when I'm artist, I'm immersing myself often in art history and their stories, but also outside of this world, when I'm combating some of the social realities that exist. I find that when I'm in the studio and I'm able to kind of sit with these tensions and realities and create something beautiful from the pieces and the fragments, that then it gives me an ability and a way of seeing and moving in the world to want to do the same and participate with communities and community partners who are doing that work in ways. And so I feel like my whole life is like a collage of helping to put the pieces together and create something beautiful from sometimes the places that are broken by life and that are fragmented, and finding a way to bring harmony and make it beautiful and whole.
It's amazing. And it's kind of, that's the theme of kind of your story you shared, which is wonderful. It's kind of, you're practicing what you preach, which is lovely. So just a couple more comments I'll share. Crystal shared, she loves your work. Thank you for sharing your story. Very touching. Matthew John Baptiste shares, I love your stories. We're trying to get him for next year, FYI. So I love that he's here.
He's great. He's very talented.
Yeah. So this is wonderful. So yeah, he just wanted to share, I love your stories. I like how you create pieces based on energy, mood, and different times of your life. Have you ever had any difficulties working with entities, galleries, where they find your art is not focused on a particular style?
Yeah, you know, I haven't that I am conscious of. I do know, and I can speak that once I started leaning into consistently collage, and that, and I'm not sure if it was just the timing of my work and practice, or because I had kind of found a medium that was consistent, that more opportunities started coming for me to show, and work being collected. But throughout, I try to not allow the audience or those realities or possible realities, like I said, I haven't had that conversation with people, to inform what I'm making. Like, I have to create what needs to come out of me, what I'm curious about, what I'm interested in. And so I try not to allow the outside to determine what happens in here. But in honesty, like, staying with one thing not only provided opportunities for my work to be out and shown more opportunity invitations, but it also is like a muscle, right? Like, I kind of understand why people spend time, long periods of time, working with a particular thing, because the more you do it, the more it kind of becomes muscle memory, and you're able to experiment and explore and play more with your medium the more you know it. So yeah.
It's awesome. Well, I want to just thank you again, Lanecia, for your time and for your sharing your story and letting us see some of your awesome work. We will definitely compile that information, make sure everyone has a way to follow you through socials. It'll be on our website as well. And thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for joining. We will see you next time. Date to be announced for April, and then we'll have a lineup for the next academic year. But thank you again, Lanecia. Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.